In the last few seasons of The Apprentice, not that one, the amount of tasks that involve branding or logo design seems to have gone through the roof, because these contestants are not good at logo design. Obviously, these businessmen and women may be God's gift to Earth.
I have this disgusting inner self-belief. I'm so confident to the point people think I'm deluded.
But they're definitely not graphic designers, and it shows. Producing designs so bad I struggle to make it through a whole episode and will likely turn it off before they inevitably get ripped to shreds.
Let's see the logo. What is that?
That's their logo.
That's your logo?
The gold standard has to be from the opening episode of Series 16.
This baby is off the charts.
And we were treated to a masterclass in colour theory and what not to do. The boys' team was tasked with making a logo for a luxury wellness cruise to drum up interest after the pandemic. The idea for their logo was a crashing wave that meets a woman in a yoga pose. As a visual, this actually sounds pretty good. The execution, on the other hand, was not. You don't need to be an expert in colour theory here, simply ask the question, what does brown represent? As in this case, it was meant to represent a tree trunk blending into the top of a tree, but it definitely didn't look like that.
Okay, our current logo looked like a turd, okay? That was a feedback.
Yes, that's
The logo was panned by the team and their project manager. It didn't say wellness, it didn't say luxury. Unsurprisingly, the team lost. In a close second for the worst Apprentice logo was for this new electric motorbike. This contestant somehow convinced everyone she was experienced in media and advertising, but managed to produce one of the worst logos I've ever seen. Anything the team thought of, it was thrown into the logo, and it didn't help that the name of the bike was just terrible.
So maybe something like Zip Zap.
When people say less is more, this is what they're talking about. This logo had everything. It had lightning bolts, the bike, the checkered flags in the name, and a side effect was it made the logo difficult to read.
You say it's Zip Zap, but I can't read that from your visual. At best it says Zizar.
Another horrendous logo was born during a task involving Formula E. The other team's logo was an absolute mess, so this should give you an idea of how bad this logo was. These brain surgeons decided to use a petrol-powered Ferrari in a logo for a Formula E team, and the layout they chose made it look like a screenshot from a retro racing game. The project manager's reaction was just perfect.
I'm gobsmacked. It was like we lost our branding team and someone gave it to a 5-year-old with crayons. That's pretty much what we had. It was an absolutely awful job.
You can practically hear the production team rubbing their little hands together in the background. A bad logo doesn't necessarily mean the team will lose, as this team did end up winning, and their Formula E car looked a lot better than the other teams as well. Sometimes teams will come up with good ideas but completely botch the execution, like with this Starpod logo. It was for this weird transport electric pod thing, and the logo featured a silhouette of the pod with a star in the middle. But the style they chose meant it didn't quite come across that way.
But actually, what they put together looks like a toaster that's exploding.
There are quite a few boring or uninteresting logos that really aren't worth talking about. One thing I've learned is that playing it safe is the best option on these tasks. It's better to be boring rather than take a big swing and a miss just because you don't have enough time. So look no further than this truly horrendous idea. Not only was the skincare product a moisturiser that stained the skin green, the bottle for this product called Antivenom kind of looked like a sex toy. The idea was terrible to begin with, the logo looked like it was competing with Monster Energy drink, it came across as being aggressive, it was too complicated, and in the end it just looked unfinished. One aspect of the process that has been kept the same from the beginning is that teams can't use some of the modern technology in the design process. They have smartphones, but they can't use, say, Slack or message each other constantly. This does give both teams limitations that they need to work around and to manage on their own, but it's not a real-life example of how to manage a design or branding project when teams can't use the things that pretty much everyone uses nowadays. And if there's a spelling mistake, once you leave the graphic designer, that's it, you can't change it. While making a video game in Series 16, one team misspelled the name of their game Arctic Savior. It's not pointed out until after they've left the graphic designer, so they can't change it. It's a digital asset, not a painting on a canvas hanging in the Louvre. Fixing the spelling would take 2 seconds. The same happened back in Series 8 with this new table source called Bellissimo. They're not allowed to spell check or double check the definition, so it ended up being spelt wrong on the label. Spelling mistakes are bad enough, but one team unintentionally wished death upon all babies in Series 16. One team was working on branding for baby food, and the name they came up with was First Time Foodie. While making the logo, they replaced the O's in foodie with 2 bowls, which didn't really look like O's, so instead the name read.
When I look at it, all I see is first time dies.
None of the 3 team members noticed, and it wasn't until the pitch when it was pointed out. Because of this terrible blunder, they got 0 orders, but they could have argued that this was a prototype or a first go at the product so they could alter it in future, which has been done before in other tasks. This might not have mattered, as in this case no one had noticed until the first pitch. But in real life, if something is seen as being inappropriate or it's incorrect, it would get changed at the drop of a hat. In so many cases, teams just run out of time, having to throw everything together just to get the design finished for the deadline. In some cases, the act of choosing the correct font is seen as being a huge waste of time, even though we're only showing about 30 seconds of this. One team was making a logo for a cereal brand in Series 18, and the logo is drawn out by the designer, and they have to run with the first version of it. And because it's the first draft, it looks terrible.
Sam, I think we should leave that there for now because we just don't have time.
I think it does the job. Are we happy with it or not?
They also had to rush the cereal box design as well, and they forgot to add the cereal image to the box. You know, the kind of thing every cereal box includes. The characters or mascots are equally bad, which is what you would expect from non-illustrators or designers with a very tight deadline. In the Series 11 final, it's mentioned that a team had 3 hours to make their logo.
Took 3 men, 3 hours, that's effectively 9 man-hours to produce something like that.
And if this team did get the same amount of time, what were they doing for 3 hours? On a number of tasks, the boxes or designs are downright unfinished, and it definitely looks that way.
You know what, I just have to go with it. It is what it is.
On the whole, these deadlines feel pretty unrealistic, as they have to come up with the concept, the name, the logo, design the logo, then design the product or the box to go along with it. It doesn't look like they can do any research to establish what's already out there, or what the competition would be. In the second episode of Series 1, the boys team made a toy that was like an electronic version of the card game Top Trumps. Then Alan Sugar pulls out a vaguely similar toy, and then criticises them for not knowing it existed, even though they couldn't do any research to find that out. While working on these tasks, the teams are split down the middle, so one half of the team will make the logo, and the other half will make the product. But the teams rarely, if ever, contact each other to ask a second opinion, like, is brown a terrible idea? And sometimes one half of the team might just change the name of the product because they didn't like it, and they don't tell the team about it because they probably can't, and they don't find out until they meet the following day. Having to be the unfortunate designer that has to create their terrible ideas is my personal nightmare.
You're probably terrorising him.
When you want someone to get all of it,
and I understand why you're upset. I do, and I'm
Kimberly,
just as upset on the inside. I am, and I don't want. I'm gonna have this fight. You want to see me with balls? I'm gonna give you balls right now. You're yelling.
I've got really one thing to say, and I think Philip's behaving like a complete dickhead.
At no point can this designer give any input or recommendations. They have to sit there and essentially create whatever the contestants tell them to make. And I can only imagine what's going through their heads while they're making these terrible designs.
It says everything it needs to say. It doesn't look okay.
But in one famous case from the first series, a designer was given the task of designing a poster for this new jukebox without a contestant present. The product was basically a CD player that could hold 10 discs instead of 1. Unsurprisingly, this never caught on.
It looks a bit cheap, it's a bit tacky, but I guess that's the sort of point, you know.
So the contestant, Syra, gave the designer the images and the content that needed to be on the poster, and then just left him to it, while she was off moving chairs around in preparation for the pitch. This designer knew exactly what he was doing, he did the absolute bare minimum, and from the looks of things, he made this poster in Microsoft Word. Syra hated the design, which was her fault, because she wasn't there to give any direction, so she tore the poster in half before the final boardroom scene. This isn't shown, but the sellotape patching it back together is very obvious. Ever since this task, designers are usually shown with at least one contestant there.
This is pathetic.
The original prize for winning this show used to be a 6-figure job. I think everyone thought, because of the name of the Apprentice, you would be Mr. Sugar's right-hand man, like you would shadow him and learn from him, or he would consult you on certain tasks. But according to the winner of Series 6, the job was a sham employment and she sued Alan Sugar after resigning from the job. So in the following seasons, the show was changed so the winner would get an investment of £250,000. The final of each season going forward would pit the final 2 contestants against each other, where they would both have to come up with a name and of course brand their potential business. And once again, given the time constraints, these brands are not great.
What Lord Sugar is looking for is something that really stands out, is going to make really big sales. And at the moment, I can't see how Lord Sugar's going to be able to invest in her.
It kind of serves as a prototype, and from what I've seen, the logo is usually changed for the real life business, and these new logos are thankfully much better. For all my bitching and moaning about a daft TV show where I am obviously expecting way too much, there have been some good designs to come out of these challenges. There was a great concept of a rose in a wine glass for a sparkling wine website from Series 8. This idea for a men's shampoo called Western had a pretty good concept overall, with a simple yet well executed logo. But head and shoulders above everything was a cereal brand from Series 5 called Treasure Flakes. Somehow the mascot, name, advert and overall concept was done in just 2 days, and the final product looks better than some cereals on most store shelves. It was so good that in the pitch, the only complaints anyone seemed to have was that the box is too crowded and the messaging is a bit confusing. It's as if they were looking for something to complain about.